but I'm gonna rip Craig apart. I'm just right out of the fucking gate. So
Totally.
Thanks for checking out Party Like a Rockstar podcast. I'm your host, Joel Miller. Today's episode is brought to you by Misha's Kind Foods. They're an LA-based small business making the world's finest non-dairy cheese spreads on the market today. They're delicious and healthy, made from a cashew and almond milk, and blended with various locally sourced fresh herbs, vegetables, and spices. There's no vegetable oils, soy, fillers, starches, or nutritional yeast. It's lactose-free, paleo, keto, kosher, Parev, and 100% vegan. Enjoy the show. All right, let's get into it. So, Nick Rucker is a musician, producer, and sound engineer based out of Asheville, North Carolina. He's been the front of house engineer for heavy metal band Steel Panther since 2006.
Jesus, long. Sorry, go ahead.
Forever and ever, man. Forever. They were just little boys back then, those guys. Actually, it's probably a bad one since they're like an 80s hair band. They'll probably be like, no, they were still had long hair back then. All right. My second guest is my old neighbor, Craig. The only thing hotter than the house full of ladies that lived next door to us was Craig himself. Always the small spoon. He would coddle my balls only the way an ex-catfish farmer would know how to do. I close my eyes on attention. I close my eyes on occasion and can still picture him crossing back over the driveway, always in a rush to snuggle up with the many garbage bags of Taco Bell sauce that he hoarded. A gentle man of many talents, Craig, not surprisingly, found himself sneaking his way into the noble profession of music. Craig Jenkins has worked he's worked as a tour manager, front of house and monitor engineer, and a tour bus driver. He's worked for Frank Turner and the Sleeping Souls, Lucero, Mad Caddies, Chuck Ragan, Flogging Molly, Lagwagon, Old Man Markley, Black Pacific, which is a side project of Jim's from Pennywise, and Abloom, a side project with members of Snot, Soulfly, and One Side Zero. Craig himself owned and operated Velvet Jones, a bar and music venue out of Santa Barbara from 2000 to 2019. How are you guys doing?
Good, man.
I miss you guys.
Club DJ inflections while telling that story. That's lovely.
I did what?
Your strip club DJ inflections on telling that story.
You know what? I'm getting it down. I got the important part. I even slowed down. I'm like, I close my eyes on occasion.
Yeah. Well, and to clarify, those Taco Bell sauces were my roommate Dave's. Those had nothing to do with me.
Yep. Have you heard this? That was actually my intro here. But I was like, so tell me about Drew Barrymore. Does she love Taco Bell sauce?
Oh dear. Yeah, Drew Barrymore, her and Justin Long came by the club one night randomly when we were closed. I think we ran in, and then Donald, who Nick and I both know, used to run my bar. I think took him out to the bowling alley, or maybe they met at the bowling alley, came to the bar. I don't know. But yeah.
I heard we went to a party with him.
Oh yeah. No, well, I mean, it wasn't me. It was just at my club that I watched on the security tape afterwards.
Well, that was a boring story. Thanks, Craig.
I know. Good start, Joel.
A crappy start. Anyway, go back to him like snuggling up with me. But so do you know the Taco Bell story, Nick?
No, I don't, but I can tell by the length of the bio that you read for Craig that you guys have a friendship relationship, whereas he and I had a boss-employee relationship for 5 or 6 years, and then we're friends after that. So, but yeah, no, I never heard the Taco Bell sauce.
Yeah, Joel used to live across the street from me when we were in IV, 6624 Pasado, if I remember correctly. And,
damn, you're good.
At the time, loved hoarding Taco Bell hot sauces to the point where we had about 8 or 9 like trash bags full in our garage. Black
trash bags, like the hefty, like lawn ones.
And those, I remember the day we had to get rid of them. It was over vacation, and I was in town working, and Dave had gone home, and we had ants everywhere. We just had to get rid of this shit. But I mean, it was known throughout Isla Vista what was on there.
They changed Taco Bell where they didn't have any of the sauce out front anymore. You had to ask for it at the counter because of Dave.
Right.
Because of Dave, so, yeah, he made that rule change.
But this dude,
when you got rid of the sauce, you gave it to Dexter Holland. He bottled it and made his Gringo Bandito. Is that what happened?
That's exactly what happened.
We were his inspiration.
But dude, Dave didn't talk to me for like 3 months after we got rid of that because he wasn't there and we did. He came back, it was gone, and he was just like so pissed off.
So Craig, who lived with me, who then lived with you later, I was hoarding beer cans. I filled the garage filled with beer cans. I had and all the people would come by. Can we have your beer cans? No, fuck off. I was really proud of it. I loved it. Well, Craig moved in, and the next day he gave all my cans away. And
I would. I never moved in with you.
Craig Adams.
Oh, Craig Adams.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, I'm livid, dude. I had probably $100 worth. I don't know. I had $3,000 worth of cans. I mean, it was 2 cars worth of cans. And he gave them all away. I was Superman. These are the college crap that you get into, the clear focuses. But this dude, Dave, actually, I don't remember if you remember this. So he was a kooky guy, but he was like, he's a great dude. And he got in this thing where they had Gatorade, and you could look, if you opened it up and the bottle said you're a winner, you would get like Michael Jordan playing cards and duffel bags, and I don't know. Did you ever hear about any of this, Craig? You know where I'm going with this? So he realizes that if it's watermelon or lemon, you can look through the bottom and see if it's a winner.
Okay, yeah, all right.
So Dave shows me, and I'm kind of like, holy shit. So I steal my buddy's car, literally just took it without telling me. He was at school, so we went over to his house, the big house, you're gonna remember, and I took the keys, this guy Patrick, and Dave and I drove to every 7-Eleven and supermarket, convenience store, everything we could find from Santa Barbara to LA, and we bought all the winners. But what was great was they'd have these in the store, what do you call it, like N units or something? There's a special name for it where they stack everything up to look real pretty. Mm-hmm. And we, in the beginning, we were kind of looking like, did we do it? And like the answer is yes, of course. But by like the third store, there was no question. We would just rush in and just start ripping the displays apart, trying to find the winners. I think we spent like $300-400 on Gatorade, but it was so much fun, man.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. No, that definitely rings a bell. I love Dave. He and I lived together for the better part of college, but it was great. Moving on to people that we all know.
Yeah.
Nick, right. When did we meet, Nick? Well, that wasn't until, was it at Orange Whip, or was it after that?
This might have been
my show. Hold on a minute here.
Yeah, no, I'm not here to talk to you. No one cares.
When did you first meet Craig?
Ask the right questions, Joel. I don't have to do your fucking job for you.
Oh my God, this fucking guy.
I might have actually been in his bar before I was 21.
Don't say that.
No, not to drink, but to like drop off a PA system or work sound. There was
how long have you been doing sound? How long were you doing sound before?
I started at maybe 16 or 17. There was a dude in Santa Barbara who put on a festival at the old Spanish days, that fiesta thing that goes on in De La Guerra Plaza. And so he would like train up young kids who were interested in production.
Were you interested in sound specifically, or were you interested in any kind of production? Don't know.
Sound specifically, because I was playing in punk bands when I was a kid. There was an all ages club called the Living Room back then.
So you played guitar,
I played drums, guitar, kind of whatever. I was in so many bands in high school, just wherever I could play and whatever I could play.
Worst band name? What was your worst band name in high school?
The worst band name was worst and also the best, but it was the Savoir Faire Pistol Pocket Dance Band, and this was like an 11-piece swing band. Back in, if you remember, in the late 90s, there was a resurgence of swing with Big Bad Voodoo Daddy and Squirrel Nut Zippers and those kinds of bands. So yeah, we were doing that thing, and we were playing up and down State Street, like still in high school.
Did you have an abbreviation, or did you use the whole name?
We used the whole name all the time.
Wow. I don't think Craig could spell that well.
No, that was before my time, because I didn't meet Nick until.
Yeah, you met Craig, and the name of the band was Band. That was Band. I guess they did have the band already. All right, so you're 16, 17. You start doing sound all the time. You're obviously drinking the Kool-Aid. You like it. So you met Craig and you started to work at Velvet Jones, or?
Yeah, well, when I was like 18 or 19, I was working at a place called Yucatan, which was up the street. That was 1117 State Street.
Remember that.
And Joey Cape's label partner, Jessica, was the promoter there. And she used to promote, God, all up and down State. So I'd see her when I was a kid. You know, I'd be walking up and down the street, just killing time on State Street, and she'd be in there cleaning the bar, smoking cigarettes out front or whatever. And so she and I became tight when I was a little kid, because I would work her shows, because that place happened to be all ages. And then Craig was at Wildcat, so I sort of knew of him. But when
Wildcat is a bar?
it was a bar lounge, basically the place for the kids, you know, DJ dancing, all that type of thing. But yeah, I think once he opened Velvet Jones and once I was 21, I started sort of coming in there regularly. Would bring my bands in there. I think I went away for a period of time, but then came back. I think I might have gone on tour with one of my bands, but yeah, that was the only place to play for rock and roll for a number of years. Once Yucatan shut down, there wasn't really another spot on state where you could see live music that was, you know, punk and rock for all that time. And then unless you got to a much bigger venue,
right? Santa Barbara Bowl
or the Arlington. Yeah, so that was pretty much it. So if you were 500 or less in a town like Santa Barbara, Velvet was pretty much the spot.
So was Ugly Kid Joe too small to play in your band there? They couldn't get enough people.
I think
didn't they play?
I don't even know if they existed back then. I think they were on hiatus for the whole time.
Yeah,
they've been on hiatus a lot of years, I think.
Because they were done around in the late 90s, and we didn't start until December of 2000. And so, it was, I mean, I think, you know, Santa Barbara was really trying to position itself, like at least at that time. And Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was kind of positioning itself to be kind of the next resurgence of like a mini Seattle with all the bands that we had coming out of it.
I would totally.
Dishwalla. What's that?
Yeah, there was that like late 90s, well, early to late 90s. So you had Dishwalla was all over the radio. Totally Wet Sprocket had been on the radio since the early 90s. Summer Camp got signed. Stegosaurus was another band that got signed. You had like the Sugar Cult, that whole scene, Marco DeSantis, everything he was involved in. So there was like a lot of buzz, and there was a lot of
Lagwagon, right?
Lagwagon on the heavier side. Then you had Snot, and later on Devil Driver. And I mean, we were just cranking out one, I thought, in my opinion, one great band after another. And I just felt like the timing was like we were in the right place at the right time.
Sure. Yeah, I had a couple of the Devil Driver roadies on here, and it was kind of funny. I'm like, so I read that Justin Bieber was going to do a duet with your band. The guy's like, seriously? You know, really?
Oh man.
Like, oh yeah. Devil Driver. They're good.
Oh, and they came from that band called Groby, and they were always playing at Velvet. And then their original guitarist Evan, he and I were in a band when I was about 16.
Oh, no shit. All right.
High school together. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now you're out of Asheville though.
Yeah, I just moved there in the pandemic. I'd been in LA since about 2009. But basically, as soon as Panther started touring properly, I quit the band I was playing in and have been doing that full time, basically for just over 10 years. We've been, you know, they said to me, hey, we're going to go do Download Festival in the UK. The record's coming out on Universal, and it's fucking go time. So that was my career choice, was just hop on that train and see how far it would go. And it's still going.
Do they make you wear makeup?
No, thankfully I get to do whatever I want, and it's a great gig, and they're a great bunch of guys, and I've gotten to grow so much technically, personally. I've gotten to see the world, and then, you know, got to say goodbye to LA because it started fucking sucking major dick in the pandemic, and now I live someplace that's really pretty, and so far I'm super happy there.
Yeah, my girlfriend's actually going there on vacation soon. You want to hang out with her? You can.
Yeah, send her on over.
Yeah, send her over.
Yeah, send her over. Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna sign you up. But on a more important, actually, so Steel Panther, they used to be the house band on Sunset when I was a kid. Or actually, I think it was after college, but they were the house band. They were played there every week. Super fun because you never knew who would sit in, and it was everybody. So it was interesting what they had formed in that every show was different, even though it's the same shtick with the guy messing with his hair at the time. I don't know if he's still doing the same thing, but he has the mirror the entire time. You didn't know who was sitting with him. It'd be Scott Ian. It could be Tommy Lee. It could be like Bret Michaels or Ricky Rocket or whatever. And they were all sit in and play with these guys on a weekly basis. So you didn't know who would come. And it was fun because they'd be looking around and they'd see somebody in the audience and be like, come on, motherfucker. And the guy'd be like, oh, all right. Super, super neat. The thing that was also neat about those guys is their repertoire of music is they know like every 80s song. So whoever came up, it was cool. They do it like that. They could play it. It was really neat. Are they still doing the same thing with various people sitting in? I mean, they're much bigger than they were back then. But even at the Key Club, man, the Key Club sat a lot of people.
The Key Club was where I first started working for them. And back then there was no YouTube. Not everyone had a professional streaming device in their pocket. This was 2005, 2006. So there was a video that went viral of Kelly Clarkson singing Don't Stop Believing.
Oh yeah, Craig turned me on to that. It's one of his favorite songs.
It was fucking jaw-dropping. It was such a cool performance and so cool to see. So that sort of started bringing in more and more of the awareness about that show. And I'm trying to remember where you're going with this.
They were playing at the Key Club. Various people sitting in. So Kelly Clarkson, I missed that.
So, yeah. So back in the, when they were doing just covers when I first started working with them in 2006 till about 2009, like I was saying, they, you get whatever special guests happened to be in town. There was a dude who used to come to the shows. That was sort of his in at the show, was that he would bring celebrities. This guy, Josh Richmond. I don't know much about him other than that he was the reason that you'd see some famous person with, Dennis Rodman would get on stage.
Cocaine dealer, definitely cocaine dealer. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, I never even thought of that, but yeah. So
I'm just saying. I don't know.
Well,
Josh Richmond's, we meant Avich. Josh Richmond's Avich, that guy.
My introduction to those guys, I think, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, was similar to yours, where I think it was at the Viper Room, and they were going by Metal School at the time.
They were.
Yeah.
That's before.
I had an arm length, like Liberty Spike mohawk, right? So I kind of stood out in the crowd, and I was with the girl I was seeing at the time, and we went to go check out the show, because I would go down there to try and find bands for the club, because Santa Barbara, as rich as it is, and sometimes, there's also dry times where you got to go out and kind of find somebody. And I got turned on to these guys. And Viper Room only holds, how many people? It's smaller than Velvet Jones, right, Nick? Like 200?
Yeah, it's about
200. Okay, so I'm in the crowd, and they're doing their set, and they single me out. And they're like, oh, let's get this. They want to make fun of me, obviously. They bring me up on stage. I'm like, okay. So I get up on stage, and they brought up the singer from Disturbed. Was it David Draymond, I think?
Yeah.
And Tommy Lee on drums. And they're like, you know how to play? And I played bass for about 8 years at this point. I'm like, oh, yeah, what do you guys want to do? And we ended up running through Pour Some Sugar on Me and Rock You Like a Hurricane was my very first time meeting those dudes. Then after that, they're super easy to approachable and like, hey, I got this club. I want you guys to come up.
So hold on. So you're hanging out. They don't know you on the club. They don't
know me from a fucking hole.
You're just some guy with a mohawk. And they're like, you must know how to play. Come up.
Well, no, they wanted to make fun of me because I was the punk rock dude at the hair metal show. So the idea was to bring me on stage, and it kind of rolled into like, they were bringing other people on stage, and they kind of looked at me like, hey man, what do you know how to play? And I'm like, I play bass. And they hand Lexi, I don't even think the thing was on. Maybe it was. I don't know. They handed me his guitar. And they're like, well, what do you got? Because I was familiar with obviously their playlist, and I just threw out one, and everybody knew it, and we just tore into it. And what sucks about that is, like Nick was saying, it was pre-YouTube, pre-everyone having a phone. There's no documentation of this ever happening.
Yeah, because it'd be neat. So it was you and
see how that turned out, because it could have been a complete train wreck based on how much I had drank that night. But I had a great time. The guys seemed to, we seemed to get along, and I was just like, hey, let's get you guys up here. And I think that kind of leads into how you met him, right, Nick? Because I had him like every Tuesday was their weekly at Velvet for about a year.
Oh, no kidding.
And so we had him as a residency there, and then it just Santa Barbara's kind of fickle when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like they take it for granted, like, oh, we'll just catch it next week. And at the time, they were kind of pricey for what we were used to paying bands, and so it just came to a point where we just couldn't afford it anymore. But I remember having Nick. You were doing sound for him, right? Is that how you got introduced to those guys?
Well, I met them basically through working for you, because you hired them at Velvet when I was working there, and they saw me running around like a madman doing the whole show by myself, and they liked the way that I worked. And Darren Sticks, their drummer, like still to this day, if there's a local crew dude who he likes their vibe, he'll get their number just in case. And that happened just the other day. We were in Grand Junction, Colorado. He asked the house guy, he's like, let me get your email just in case. So we kept in touch, and like many years later, I hit them up when I was living in Orange County and I was working at a hotel and I was like fucking hating it. I was doing AV, where you like put like a lavalier mic on one guy and have like a flip chart with markers and shit. And I just randomly was going to go see them on a Monday. I called him up and he said, "Hey, what are you doing for work right now? We just had to fire somebody. There was a stagehand at the Key Club." This is back when they were called Metal School. But yeah, stagehand at the Key Club was trying to solicit marijuana from a band, like something like, "Oh, I'll make you sound better if you give me weed," or I'll turn your vocal up in the monitor if you give me weed. So they fired that dude and brought me in. And after maybe 3 weeks,
was me, by the way.
that probably was you.
Totally you, Joel.
That was totally me. Yeah.
After about 3 weeks of that, the house guy at Key Club got fired for drinking on the job. And so they handed me the front of house position. And I took it from there.
But didn't you have a similar, or did I drink and dream this? Didn't they pull you up on stage to play
at
drums?
At Velvet.
A very vivid memory of that. And I want to believe that happened.
They threw me up on drums and I played Hot for Teacher. I don't know how we got through it, but we did.
Oh, I remember that being awesome. I was coughing
up
and screaming so loud.
It was all a complete blur. Like I'd never actually played that song in my life on drums, but I'd heard it enough times. Yeah. Drums is the one instrument you can fucking fake pretty much anything.
I just remember sitting there jaw wide open, like, because I'd seen you play drums before, but that's arguably one of the more difficult ones, especially if you've never played it before. And I just remember thinking you just nailed it, and the band was like right in there. I don't know, you guys just gelled quite quickly, and that's where I thought the seed was planted with you and them.
Absolutely, that was the little kernel of the nugget of goodness that blossomed.
You should be in the band. They should do like a revolving drummer or something.
God,
fine.
I basically am in the band. I've been doing this for 15 years.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Crazy. I can't believe, yeah, that blew my mind when you said 06. I'm like, holy shit, it has been that long.
Yeah.
Good times.
Great times.
So you're sick of them.
I gotta say, I don't know if there's another band I'd want to work for at this point, because they're, like you said, it's the same shtick every night, and I've been listening to pretty much the same jokes every night for 15 years, and it still cracks me up. And when they go off script is when I find it really funny, because like no one else gets it, but I go, oh, they've never said that before, and I'm fucking falling over in the sound booth laughing.
Yeah. Well, they definitely have a sense of humor, which is why they it's interesting, you have like the Spazmatics. I'm assuming they would have played at your place at some point.
Yeah, no, we had them as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but these guys really made a niche. They make really good money. So does the Spazmatics, but I wonder why they never did the same thing. Get 5 other guys, put them in makeup, a long hair, call them the same thing, and stick them in a different venue, and just make it a bigger enterprise.
If you want me to peel back the veil on that to answer that question in depth, Spazmatics, Metal Shop, as they were called back then, and Boogie Nights were all a product of Perfect World Entertainment management team. And so, at least what I know from working with these guys that long, is that their way of keeping bands constantly moving is that they would rotate in and out band members. So you'd book Spazmatics in Salt Lake City. Well, there's like 3 core guys, and then they'd switch out the drummer here and there.
Right.
And this is a clever management technique called divide and conquer, where if you never let them unify, they can never stand up to you and demand better treatment, better salary, whatever it is. And so when we all sort of first started working with these guys, they were metal school. They fired Perfect World Entertainment. There was a lawsuit. It got pretty messy, but they essentially freed themselves from the shackles.
Oh, so they were under the same umbrella as all those other dudes.
Yes, and that's also why they know every fucking single song, is because they all were in disco bands and 80s bands before they started.
I can see that. That makes sense to me.
In fact, just the other day, they were like jamming on Melt With You from Modern English. And, fucking note for note, they know, because they played those songs every night for years. I mean, these guys they were professional 5 nights a week cover band musicians.
Yeah.
But because they banded together and said, fuck you to this guy, that's why they were the ones who stuck together. And that's maybe why the Spazmatics couldn't have done the same thing. And then the fact that they started making their own music and carving that niche for themselves.
So they 86 metal school because of getting out of that umbrella?
or the 86 Metal Shop to become Metal School. And then the same thing happened with Metal School. There was a management type silent partner guy who owned a portion of that name. And rather than negotiate with him, they just changed the name. And yeah, that was probably the best move they could have done.
Yeah, because now it's like old. Who cares? I mean, most
Who the fuck
people
cares
don't.
about it?
Yeah, they don't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Makes sense.
Do you think that was also kind of the decline? Because I feel like those other bands, I mean, while Steel Panther just kept climbing, like those other ones either tapered off or kind of disappeared, right? Because it's like you said, you got to unify, stand up to what's keeping them down just to break through it and get your own, make your own way.
Well, look at it. Their rate got big enough to where you couldn't book them anymore.
No, that's true.
With the other guys, you would still book. So,
and like you can do the with the cover band thing, you can do like quantity and high volume, because you can have a Boogie Nights in 6 different cities, but they're never going to do more than like 300, 400 people a night.
Right.
But there's one Steel Panther, and they could sell out Wembley Arena, as we did once back in 2015.
Wow.
Awesome.
So did anybody sit in that show or no?
No, but there is there's video of it. There's a
I mean, am I wrong? I mean, I'm pushing it because it's kind of like almost part of their act. You don't know who will show up.
Yeah, and that's when we used to play Hollywood every week. This is before the House of Blues LA was demolished. We would still get that element of the show. And now it's like, if we happen to be in Spokane where Miles Kennedy lives, Miles Kennedy will come out and do a song with him. Or if we happen to be in Orlando, Joey Fatone will get up and do a number with them. So it's less that everything's happening in LA and we happen to be there too, and more that we're worldwide. And if someone cool, like if Justin Hawkins from The Darkness happens to be in London, he'll get up and do a song with them in London. Like, so that's more what special guests you might see.
Yeah.
If we happen to be in a city where a special guest happens to live.
That's cool. All right. Well, Nick, you're definitely cool. What about you, Craig? You got anything cool to say, or you're just gonna sit there?
My stories I can't compare to a 15-year stint with Steel Panther.
Yeah, man.
I've done some fun shit.
Cool as hell.
I can't even imagine.
All right. So actually more, let's see, I do love Flogging Molly. So what were you doing with Flogging Molly? Did they come through a lot, or?
Well, no, what happened, they never played it. They were always too big to play Velvet. And I came across them because along with Nick, there's been a couple other engineers that have come through the club that have launched their career, used that as a springboard. And one of them is my friend Casey, who's been there. He started out as Frank Turner's tour manager, front of house engineer, and then he went on to go with Flogging Molly. And so one of my first tours with Frank Turner was the one tour I was bus driving, because they didn't know. I mean, I didn't really advertise a whole lot. The first tour I did was with Abloom, and that was the Zippo Hot Tour. It was Mikey Dolling from Snot, and Roy Mayorga, and Barcelo from Soulfly, and Jason Levon from One Side Zero, and we had the whole tour bus. Like, my first tour was a full 40-foot tour bus thing, and I tour managed and did sound for those dudes.
And so, how big was the tour? Like, how far did you drive? What's the longest?
It was 2 months, I think, and it was all U.S. And so we did that tour, and I remember at one part of the tour, the guys came and woke me up. It was like 4:00 in the morning, and our bus driver was kind of losing his mind. Like, you need to go talk to him. And I had just gotten my commercial driver's license like 6 months before. And so I went over and saw, and his name was Skip. And there's no way this dude's still alive. But anyway, it was about 8 or 9 in the morning. He was standing up while he was driving. There's about 13 empty Red Bull cans around him, and he was slapping himself in the face as hard as he could. Now, keep in mind, this is before iPhones. This is before anything. So we had to, first of all, figure out where the fuck we were. So I'm like, dude, he was doing about 90, and we were pulling a trailer in this bus. And so what ended up happening was, because I would put him in the hotel, as Nick knows you have to do with your drivers, you got to sort them out. Put him in his hotel. I'm like, all right, dude, go to sleep, come back here, Buster. You're picking us up at 2 a.m.
All right, so you're tour managed. Well, you're probably production manager.
Right.
Okay, all right.
So to keep in mind, this is my first tour ever, and this all leads into what we were about to talk about. I feel like you need to know this before the whatever he says.
Okay.
So we get this dude. I would take him to the hotel, and he wouldn't sleep. And then he would show up at the show because he had his laminate, and he'd watch the show. And I didn't really have much of a problem with that. I'm like, well, okay. I mean, it's my first tour. Maybe that's common. And then the dude would pick us up. He'd drive us until we all fell asleep, and then he'd pull over and sleep. And then woke up like well after we were supposed to be. I remember we're headed to Detroit to play at is it St. Andrews, Nick? Is that the venue?
Oh God, I don't know.
Yeah, the church that they converted to a venue that we're downstairs. I think is where they filmed 8 Mile. But we were supposed to do this big radio show up there, and I was trying to do the math on it. I'm looking at like actual hardcore maps, like legitimate, like trying to figure out, okay, we're this far away, we're this, and realized we were like, if we had, oh, and by the way, I did a pre-trip inspection on the bus, and we had like steel radials coming out of one of the tires. I'm like, we're not fucking going anywhere. It was Sunday in the middle of Wisconsin, pulled over to like some kind of Walmart, got the tire fixed, got back on the road, and I told this guy, Mike, we locked him in the back lounge, and I started driving. So now I'm tour managing, doing sound, and bus driving all on the same tour. And so we pull in, and we're trying to call, the radio station that's hosting the show. We're like, oh, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. And of course, you hit traffic going into Detroit. And I think we pulled into the venue. We're supposed to be there at sound check at I think noon. We got to the venue around 9:30, and about 30 minutes before we got there, the radio station's like, yeah, no, we're canceling it. So we ended up canceling a show later on in Maryland to double back and play in the shelter just because so many kids had come out for that show.
So when you locked him in the back lounge, you're gonna stay back here, you old
We're
fucker?
just like, look, dude, you totally fucked us. Like, as Nick knows, and missing a gig is the fucking worst thing you can do, especially if you're tour manager. It looks real bad on you. And so, the solution, we locked him back there until we got to Detroit. We basically just kicked him out. We called the company, like, you just send us another driver. They're like, well, we can't get you another driver for another week. I'm like, oh, good. So for the next week, I'll be sleeping in 8-minute increments while, doing sound, take a quick nap.
Did the bus company pay you?
No, for driving, no. But I think they discounted the band back on the cost of a driver. And back then, this was, keep in mind, 20 years ago. So there wasn't like this whole thing where, nope, tours stopped. We got to get you on our insurance. We got to do this. It was just roll with it. Just the show must go on, and you just got to do it.
Was it an old ass tour bus anyway?
Zippo.
You can shit on a Prevo.
Yeah, we weren't shitting on this bus. They wrapped this bus up, and I don't, you know what? It was my first tour, so I don't even think I was even paying attention to what kind of tour bus it was. But what was the initial question? I forgot where I was going with this.
I don't know, Craig. You just kept going on and on and on. We were talking about
and how we get to Flogging Molly. Okay, right. So so we did that, and then I never didn't after that tour. I was like, okay, I think I need a break from this because that just almost drove me to the edge when you're doing that much stuff with that little sleep. And I just went back to running the club for a while and didn't really let anyone know I knew how to do sound. Didn't let anyone know I knew how to drive a bus. Didn't let anyone know I knew how to do anything. And then Casey went on to work for Chuck Ragan, who did his revival tour. And then when Casey went on to just do Frank Turner, he kind of put the good word in for me and that's where I did Chuck's tour, where I was just doing sound for him, where it was Tim from Rise Against and Dave Hawes and Tokay from Streetlight Manifesto and all these dudes that were frontmen from really big established bands that were doing solo stuff for Chuck. And it was a great show, and I learned a lot.
How are you managing the bar though on the road?
At that point, I could do it from my phone because it was all just doing bookings. Just go on the laptop.
Greg. It's not I could just do it. I mean, dude, that's intense stuff.
The thing is, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on the road. The club was what I felt like was an opportunity that I jumped on because I was in a band, early on that didn't work out, and that band we broke up, and they formed with some other guys a band called Pressure 45. These are got signed to DreamWorks, did the whole thing, and then
because you were doing sound at the bar, and then you ended up buying the bar.
I was doing sound at Wildcat, and I ended up starting Velvet Jones, which was down the street. Which was, I think I was 24 when I started that bar.
That's crazy.
I had partners at the time, and then a year later, I got the partners out, and I just kept charging with it. But I think I realized, I'm a big stats and numbers guy. I'm like, the odds of me being able to make it as a paid musician and make a career out of it are very, very slim. But the odds of being able to be a part of that industry on the crew side of it, developing, that's why I wanted to make sure I knew how to do every aspect of touring that I could, which was, tour managing, front of house, monitors, everything. The only thing I didn't get proficient at was lights, and that was the one thing I kind of missed out on. But
lights after they break.
If you got a guy on your crew that can do everything, then if someone gets sick, you're covered. So I kind of was able to be marketed as kind of the utility guy, where it's like maybe I wasn't the best at what I did, but I knew how to do so many things that I never had a loss for work.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
So, but then when it launched into Casey, who did Frank Turner and now does Flogging Molly, so he brought me in to fill in for one of his guys. So I did a couple runs with them, just great. And I've been really lucky because a lot of every band I think I've toured with have been some of the best people I've met and I'm still friends with today. I've just been really lucky to not.
Yeah, most people music are fucking cool. That's the thing, they really are.
Yeah, you run across the ones that you could do without, but I feel like I've just been really fortunate to tour because I wanted to, not because I had to, which meant I could pick and choose the bands I wanted to work with. And then, like, if someone came along, oh, these guys need this, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. I can just pass on it. It wasn't something I felt like.
So when you were at the bar, did you have to deal with the writers? Is that your gig to go out and get like Fuji water or whatever?
Well, it was initially, and then I got basically a production manager that would handle all that shit.
So what's like the stupidest writer that you were supposed to fill?
Oh, dude. We had Winger play there. Nick, do you remember this story?
No, but I remember them opening up for us at the key club.
Right. And Winger made Code 415 play on the floor. He was our local, and then I think I called you guys, and you guys, I think Darren coordinated something to kind of disrespect them at the House of Blue show opening for you guys. But their rider was just all this ridiculous shit. I'm like, first of all, you realize we're a 300 cap room. I remember sitting with these guys. They're like, I'm like, and you sold about 12 tickets. So where do you think the money for this is coming from? And then of course, I jumped through the hoops because before I was like, well, maybe we'll have a big walk-up crowd. I always, give them the benefit of the doubt. So I honored it as best I could. And then no one showed up. And then at the end of the night, he actually had the nerves like, so I guess we're not getting after show, Caro's or Denny's or whatever. I'm like, get the fuck out of my bar. Everyone had come to see Code 415, and then by the time they were done, like the local crowd just bailed because no one gave a fuck about Winger.
So all they wanted was some Denny's?
Oh, well, no, that was their after show shit. The early stuff. I mean, you hear the stories about like the purple M&Ms or whatever Ozzy's legendary for having. We had a couple of the hip hop acts that would come through. I remember we had Two Live Crew that had some stuff that was, but none of it really stands out. Like I didn't really commit to memory. I was just like, okay, just figured, well, that's the
Two Live Crew played there?
Oh yeah,
a bunch of times. Yeah.
Oh, Two Live Crew, they were so great. Were you there, Nick, the night when the guys tried to break in the back door and they jumped our back door guy and Two Live Crew poured out of their Mercedes and beat the living shit out of that dude?
I don't know if I was there that night. I think.
Wait, so okay, hold on. So what?
Yeah, sorry, Joel. Nick and we have this whole. I mean, how old are you?
I'm lost. So like just regular people, like punter guys, are just beating up the doorman?
Well, the show was sold out, and the way Velvet Jones is designed was you had your front door and the back door was kind of for artist entry, but you had to put a dude back there to keep people from trying to break into the show or rush the door, rush the artist or whatever. And so I remember the guy's name was Jonathan, and he was probably about your size, Joel. He wasn't a big dude. And he was basically just paid. He just sit back there and read books because it's ultimately a pretty boring gig. But the show was sold out. These two guys couldn't get in. So their idea was they were going to beat up the back door guy and just force their way in. So the way the parking worked is behind, like facing the back doors, two parking spaces. And we didn't really have much of a dressing room. So these guys were just, hanging out, doing whatever in the Mercedes. And they see what's going on. And all of a sudden, because it wasn't just Two Live Crew, it was them, like their security, like some of the biggest, scariest dudes you've seen just poured out and just regulated these poor bastards. Ended up getting them arrested. And then like without even missing a beat, like it was just normal. They're like, okay, so we're on like 3, cool. Grab the mics, went on like nothing happened.
It's killer.
Yeah, I love that. I was real proud. Like, I mean, that's happened a few times with acts that know the game and will self-regulate. Like didn't need to get really the police too much involved or whatever. Just got them out of remove the situation. And I think they didn't even go on late. They still went on right on time.
I remember they had the Steve Miller in their song. What was the big song that they had? Well, they had a few.
Oh, it was Space Cowboy, right? They took that hook and it was
they took the hook. That's right.
What was it, Nick? I forget.
Well, it was one of the first big lawsuits, if not the first big lawsuit for rap. And they lost.
Yeah.
So they stuck a Leonard Skinner loop in instead, if I remember correctly. But the Space Cowboy one was killer. It was killer. But so if you got like one of the early tapes, you could get it with Leonard.
The original hook.
Yeah, with the original hook. Yeah, they were cool. I liked them. Remember the Fat Boys?
Oh yeah, we never got the Fat Boys.
They were dead, I think. Man, they both died really young. Yeah. It's kind of hard to get.
But as far as like 90s hip hop, I mean, shit, we had like Too Short came through.
Oh, cuss words.
What's that?
Cuss words.
He might have been the coolest, absolute, hands down, awesomest special guest I ever saw get up with Steel Panther. Was Too Short.
No kidding.
Really?
There was one time we did the Roxy. It was between when the Key Club went under and before we started House of Blues. There was this one like week of weirdness, and it was Too Short and McLovin. We're both on stage at the same time, and it was perfect.
So McLovin's he's rapping.
He was something. He was doing something, but
his band played it at Velvet. God, I can't remember the name of him. He plays drums, right?
God, I don't know.
We don't know. Oh yeah, that was probably after your time. But yeah, he came through. We had a bunch of like random celebrities just pop in there. Like Jeff Bridges came in to see his granddaughter play in like the school rock thing we were doing.
Guy's such a cool guy, man.
Yeah.
And he's fighting. What is he fighting? Leukemia or something right now. I don't know. That guy's so neat. He cuts on a public forum and says, I'm going to fight this and do the best I can or whatever. And you're like, you're such a great guy, like till the end, man. Love you, Jeff Bridges. There's actually a thing you can find on YouTube, and it's all the guys from the Big Lebowski. And they're talking about the roles they had. They're sitting like at a Denny's or a Carol's or something in a booth. And they're just talking about the movie. And it's so good. It's like 20 minutes long. And Steve Buscemi didn't want to do the movie, but he didn't want to turn it down because he'd already done, I think, Fargo. So he's like, I can't turn it down, but I didn't want to do this role. It's like a bullshit thrown in role. And then you get into not Tom Arnold. What's the other guy?
Goodman?
Yeah, John Goodman.
The other Roseanne love interest.
The other Roseanne guy. And John Goodman just starts telling him, no, haven't you read the stuff that basically you're a figment of his imagination the whole time? He goes, oh, yeah, I know. I have read that. Have you watched the movie thinking that? He goes, yeah, super, super neat. Really great, like bro chat with these guys just talking about this movie that none of them ever thought would ever
be as big as it was.
Yeah, they just did it because of the guys directing the movie, basically. None of them thought anything of it. It's really fun to watch. What's the most random guy you can think of who came in with Steel Panther? What's like, did you ever have like a Jimmy Page or somebody where you're like, holy shit, like this is next level?
Okay. I forget the dude's, the guy who plays keyboards for Bon Jovi, Dave something. I don't know his last name, but
he's keyboard Bon Jovi guy.
Keyboard Bon Jovi guy, Dave, with the curly hair. He happened to be in the crowd, and someone had rented a keyboard from SIR for the show that was happening the night before, and SIR was picking it up on Tuesday. This was on Monday night. And so the stage manager's like, we have a fucking keyboard. And he runs down to the back alley where it's stored and like fucking pulls it out. He's building it on stage. He's got the X stand, sets it up, and like
they're playing a song while he's like setting it up.
Well, they're like maybe doing like a bossa nova beat or something while he's setting it up, like they always do. But they run through Living on a Prayer. They run through You Give Love a Bad Name, but he starts it in the key that it's on the album, and they're like, whoa. We're down like 2.5 steps because holy fuck, who can sing that high? And so he's like on this Yamaha keyboard, like programming the transpose function to take it down 2.5 steps.
Super neat.
And then they go into it. It was fucking mind blowing, and it sounded so huge to have them playing it for real and not just have like the canned keyboards on the background tracks. Yeah,
that's super fun. God, what is that one track where these I can't think of this. Take It Down a Little. He says it in the rap song. They start bringing it down. I'm not going to remember, but I love all that kind of stuff. I saw at the Key Club, Ernie invited me, Ernie C. Did Body Count ever do any shows? And they were so much fun to watch. They're opening, Body Count in the house, and he just keeps repeating it. But it's fucking great. And that's the only thing he said the whole time. Body Count in the house. You guys did shows with them?
No, but I remember I was there at the Key Club setting up at probably 3 p.m, and Ernie C walks in drunk as fuck. Just stumbling in off Sunset. Like, what are you doing in here? They're like, yo, that's Ernie C from Body Count. I'm like, all right, cool. I guess you can hang out.
So Ernie, I'm doing, do you remember I made a movie, Craig? I don't know. I wasn't.
Yeah, I do. Well, I remember that's what I knew about you from college, was that you were doing the film studies, and that's what you wanted to do, was make movies. And then
No, I didn't. No, I did. I was an art guy. I was an art history major, and I took the film class because I thought it'd be easy, actually, is why I took the film class. And then I was kind of into it, though. I had a roommate named Edgar, and I wrote a screenplay, a Seinfeld episode where Edgar was the main dude, and he was supposed to be a artist. He was a sandwich artist, which is the Subway thing. And these people are like, or Seinfeld guy, you're so good, you're so talented, you're so good. So he takes it to heart, and he goes to work at the museum as a janitor because he's an artist and he shouldn't be working at it like a Subway. So anyway, it was a fun little shtick. But I was trying to do this movie, and I got a bunch of music guys in it that I knew. I had like Jonathan from Korn and Josh from Buck Cherry and stuff. And so Ernie, I wanted him to hit up Ice Cube, and he goes, you need to buy me some shoes. I want some shoes. I just want Ice Cube in my Ice-T. I want Ice-T in my movie. And he's like, you need to buy me some fucking shoes. You buy me some shoes, we can talk. So I went to like Fridays to meet with Ernie. I ain't buying you no fucking shoes, dude. I'll buy you some drinks and we'll have some burgers I'm like, but I ain't doing it. He goes, no shoes, no iced tea. And so I don't think he ever pitched it, but I used to be pretty friendly with her, and he was a character, man. He was fun. He was fun. He used to go to a lot of STP shows. He's a cool guy. He's a character. I want some shoes. He was totally serious, though.
I remember that next time somebody asked me for something, like, yeah, no, you need to buy me some shoes first. That's just a good segue.
I still remember.
I
size 10.
gotta start doing that. These fucking New Balance are not cheap,
dude.
know, right?
You gotta work it. You gotta work it. If you don't ask, you shall never receive.
I want the USA made New Balance 990s.
For 5 minutes of Nick Rucker's time. Make it happen.
Size
Make it happen.
15.
Call Ernie. He could be your shoe broker. So now that Ernie will never come on my podcast.
I know, way to go.
Yeah. Question I try to ask everybody. So I was thinking about putting together a podcast, and my friends now all have kids. And so one of them has a little girl in 5th grade. And she said you should ask all your guests when they first felt famous. So we're talking about a little kid, right? We're talking about a 5th grader. To make it a broader question, when did you first feel good about your career? What you were doing that you felt like you were on the right path? A special moment where the Bon Jovi guy came up on stage? You know, something where you looked and went, "Wow, this is really me. This is cool." What's the first moment that comes to mind? Maybe.
You want me to go first?
Do it, Nick. Yeah, I got one on deck, but go for it.
So when I was 8, 9 years old, Hysteria was the #1 album on the radio and on MTV. And I would sit and I would wait for fucking Armageddon to come on or Pour Some Sugar on Me to come on. And in 2011, we did a arena tour with Def Leppard and Motley Crue. And we're sitting in the lobby of the Malmaison in Manchester. And I'm sitting next to Rick Allen. And he's telling me what a great job I'm doing sound. He loves the way Steel Panther sounds. And I'm just like, I'm fucking talking to a drummer from Def Leppard, one of my favorite bands of all time. He's complimenting me. Like, how fucking cool is that?
That's cool.
That was when and then I got to actually call, I think I emailed the guy who taught me how to do sound, this guy Skip, because he was Motley Crue's front of house guy back in.
There's a lot of Skips in the music industry here. Okay. Skip gets around.
I just sent him an email and I was like, hey, I'm on tour right now with your old employer and Def Leppard, and I just wanted to say thank you for showing me that this was a career path that I could do.
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, the full circle stuff makes you feel good. You know, you hope that they feel good going like, hey, I didn't waste my time on that guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's cool. I like it. I like Def Leppard too. I had a guy on here named Martin Popoff. He's a major journalist. He does like the major metal music stuff, and he hates Def Leppard. it built his career. He gave them 0 stars and something he did. So the first question was about Def Leppard, and he still hates them. Was the quickie.
I think like true like metal guys, like thrash guys, fucking hated them because like in the early years they were kind of, oh, are these guys metal? And like, clearly they're like a pop rock band.
Well, he said the first 2 albums cool. After that, what the fuck? Fuck you guys.
Absolutely.
He's Canadian though. He was way more polite about it.
Probably a huge Megadeth fan too, and that's fine.
I'm sure. Actually, I'm certain. Yes. All right, Craig. What happened to you that was so neat?
Well, I mean, for me, it certainly didn't happen that age. I think I kind of, bounced around the music business, trying to find where it was I fit in, like from being in bands, from being on the production side, from running the club, and a lot of that stuff kind of happened just because, like, I like to take advantage of opportunities that are presented to me. I know isn't a word I like to throw around a lot. So it's like, hey, you want to do this? Yes, let's do it. I'll try anything. So I think it was on Chuck Ragan's Revival Tour, which is, I think, the second big tour that I had done. And that was, I think we did something like 48 shows in 43 days. Cause that guy just, you do a morning thing on Sirius Radio, or you do some school function, then you do the show at night and just go and go and go and go and go. And it was the second half of that run. And we had Tim McElrath from Rise Against, and we were in Denver. I believe it was at Summit Music Hall. And all I know, so we do our sound check, do the whole thing. And then, Tim comes to me, he's like, hey, there's a chance that I might have a guest come up and sing a song with me. He's like, can you work out, getting her a chair, getting her in front of a monitor, like sort her out. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And so, I see, before the show, the dad and the daughter show up, and Tim and the girl, like, hey, come over here, let's run this real quick. I can kind of faintly hear that he's playing a song and she's singing along with him. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. but not knowing the story behind it. So we get to where the show's happening, and he brings her up on stage, and she's really nervous. She's this adorable girl. You can find it on YouTube. I think her name is Delcy, and her favorite song is Hero of War. And so, you know, as I'm sure Nick knows, or anyone's done sound, is when you've got an acoustic guitar with a pickup in it, and you're sitting right up against a monitor, and you've got a microphone, 2 vocal mics, and of course she's tiny, so it's really close to the monitor. And I'm going, you know, and all I kept thinking was, oh my God, I'm gonna ruin this fucking moment if I can't make sure that this feedback loop that's inevitable just doesn't happen. And so I'm on stage, I'm setting it up, I'm trying to do the math in my head. I'm like, okay, how far away can I get from this, do this, and set the mic up at what angle and all that stuff. Just quick on the fly, you know, calculations on there. We end up getting through it. Sounds great. She's got this tiny little voice. She just belted through it, just made her whole day. Everything was awesome. Now, come to find out that girl's story was that her dad had emailed Tim maybe 2 days before, telling this long story about how, you know, he and her mom are divorced, and her mom is making all these phony accusations and trying to get custody. And the poor girl is having all these issues. Like, she's wet in the bed. She's doing, you know, everything, every horrible thing you can think of happened to a poor girl that just likes, you know, punk rock music or whatever was happening to this girl. And he's like, hey, you know, all he asked was, you know, if maybe Tim could, and Hero of War was her favorite song. And, you know, would it be possible if Tim could just come out and say hi to her and really, you know, brighten this girl's life? And they turned it into that experience for her. Where, and I'll send you guys the link, the video. It's just,
yeah, please.
It's very moving. And the whole time I just kept sitting there just like shitting my pants, like, please, you know, sound gods, do not let this shit feed back. And then what that moment became, like, I didn't realize in the moment, I just knew I was just trying to do my job. But the fact that it did go off without a hitch, and the response that it got, and you know, everybody, you know, coming back and saying, hey, sounded great job. But for me, in that moment, it was me, Tim, and Delcy, and there was no one else in the room. And it was just like that. And I'm sure, Nick, you've probably had something similar to like that, you know, doing sound where you're just like, please don't, you know, if based on how stable it is, yeah, please, on the love of God, don't let this fuck up. And I think that was the moment where I was just like, okay, you know, moments like this is what kept me going for like the next 5 years. And they're very few and far between, but that was the first one.
Oh, that's cool. I used to wet the bed when I lived next door to Craig because he was so mean to me.
Yeah, what was the password to get into my house?
I was just gonna go into it. So tell this that this was great. So the honest to God truth, the password to get into Craig's house, not for me, for anybody who would come over, was not Joel. And they would let him in. So they made me say not Joel to come into the house because I had to remember that guy Ryan. Because I had to give that guy Ryan something, you know. I had to say not Joel to enter the house to give this guy something to
who is it? It's not Joel. We open the door like, fuck, it is Joel.
It is. That was amazing.
Oh, you deserved it.
Yeah, absolutely. So after all these years, would you forgive Skip the driver if he's still alive?
Oh God. You know what? For the longest, I was just talking, I ran to Mikey Dolling not too long ago. We were kind of laughing about that whole thing. But it's like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you come across people of all walks that end up somehow stumbling into the touring business, whether it be bus drivers or crew guys or whatever else. Some of them have great attitudes and are very thankful and grateful for what they're doing. Others are jaded as shit and probably should have never been given the job to begin with. I mean, we had another bus driver. To answer your question, you know what? I can laugh about it now because we all survived it, and I'd probably forgive him. But it's like, fuck him, man. He put all of our lives in danger. And
yeah.
I mean, the guy that you put your trust in the most is your driver. We had a similar experience with Mad Caddies going into we were going into Canada, and the guy was supposed to come from LA. He was supposed to drive up on 4th of July to pick me up in Red Bluff and then get us to Seattle. He showed up. He was wasted when he showed up. And then I'm like, okay, and he showed up 8 hours late. So I was sitting at the Elks Lodge parking lot at 3 a.m. We had to be in Seattle at 5 p.m. I'm like, dude, you been drinking? I just booted him to the back. I'm like, this is how the tour is starting. So then I drove after being up all that day, all the next day till 5 p.m. I'm like, finally, I'm like, okay, dude, can you drive? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, we got to Portland to pick up our guitar tech. And I'm like, just let me sleep for like an hour. Slept for like 30 minutes and I could feel the bus all over the place. I'm like, God damn it. Woke up, threw him to the back. And I'm like, dude, fine, I'll go. And so it was about a 20, God, how long is that in a bus, Nick? Like 18 hours?
Sounds about right.
All the way up the West Coast. And then, then as we go to get into Canada, it turns out this guy has like a DUI that wouldn't let him in or whatever else. And so then we ended up having to pay whatever it is.
I had a bunch of bus. I'd never had anybody that bad.
Oh, dude, those are the two worst. Every other driver we've had since has been great, but that guy was a fucking nightmare, and he didn't have a credit card, which meant as tour manager, you couldn't check it. You couldn't just send him to the hotel. You couldn't just
You
put him
got
in
to
an Uber.
hold his hand and go check him in.
I had to hold him in, and not only that, I eventually ended up getting him a prepaid card. I'm like, just because when you get there, the last thing I need to do is drive 5 miles or get an Uber 5 miles to drop this dude off. And so I got him this credit card so he could check in the hotels. The very first Uber I put him in, because I called it on my account, because obviously he didn't have it. He sent it. Then I got kicked off of Uber because this dude was just saying the most horrifically racist things to the driver. I'm like, dude, that wasn't me. Like, I didn't try to explain my case. I'm like, if I can't use Uber, I can't effectively be a tour manager. And this fucking guy's ruining everything. And that was like in the first 3 days of that tour. But, you roll with it. You figure it out. You just, adjust and shows must go on. But, yeah, that was...
I used to love the drivers because they would tell you the greatest stories, man.
Yeah, on the whole, that is true. But, I've had some great drivers. But yeah,
right,
these two are terrible.
I do my research on you guys, which is obviously very extensive if you haven't seen any of the episodes. But my research usually entails just listening to bands you guys work for. And I actually only listened to one because I got stuck because I really liked it. And it was Lucero. And I hadn't heard of them. And I ended up listening to it all day today. What's the deal with those guys? Because that was great shit.
Lucero they're out of Memphis, Tennessee, I think. God, I haven't seen those dudes in forever. I met them. God, it must have been from a Velvet show. And then I remember I was out with Frank Turner doing monitors, and we were somewhere in the South, and I think Lucero had was either going on after us or before us. And I had known those guys enough to joke around or whatever else. And again, they're like, wait a minute. Like, how to do monitors? And I guess they had just had to recently let their monitor guy go. Our tour was coming to an end. They're like, you got to come work for us. I'm like, fuck, sounds great. Everybody in that camp, I cannot speak highly enough. From Ben, Jimmy, their tour manager, their sound guy, everybody on down, just great dudes. But it was a little bit different than I was used to doing the long shows because revival tours are always 3.5 hours long.
Yeah.
These guys would play like, 2.5, usually 2.5 hour sets.
Oh.
And it's their music's just about drinking and women. And it's just, yeah, I remember, I think one of my favorite drinking quotes came from Ben, because I remember the time I was at the peak of my drinking abilities. And it was always he and I were the two.
Here, isn't he?
We were the last two to go to bed. We would close down every bar. We would, and I think we were at the Lanes in Asbury Park, and we were sitting there, and people just come up. It was just he and I drinking and talking, and like even if fans would come up, he was just kind of like, I got underwear older than you, like fuck off. I'm trying to drink myself to death over here. But at one point, and maybe this was his, I credit him for having said this. Maybe you guys have heard this somewhere else, but he told me, he's like, you know what, Craig? I like my whiskey the way I like my women. 18 years old and mixed up with Coke. And I'm like, thank God for you.
Wow.
But yeah, those guys, and they're still killing it, and they're evolving, and I've kind of lost touch with them over the years.
They had some good songs. I really like listening.
If you listen to them, like I would recommend, if you're going to do a deep dive on them, do it chronologically, and you can kind of hear how their sound kind of evolves, and you hear his voice kind of, mature into that raspy, calling card, sound that he has, similar to Chuck Ragan. And it's just, yeah, those guys are, I think their keyboard player, was the original keyboard player for Dexy's Midnight Runners. They have a great horn section, and it's just like, yeah, they're live at Live in Atlanta album is another great one. But yeah, those guys, one of my favorite bands to work for by far.
Cool. What's the worst act to come through Velvet Jones that you thought was going to be amazing?
That I thought was going to be amazing?
Yeah, I thought they were going to be great, and they showed up, and you're like, what the fuck, man?
What the hell is this all about?
Sound like shit.
I'm trying to think of a big letdown show that we booked that I was excited about, and they just didn't deliver. That's a good question.
Or what about you, Nick? Or maybe you shouldn't say because you're working for who came up on the stage who you're like, this is going to be great. And then you're like, oh, God, what the hell?
Well, I'll harken back to that Motley Crue Def Leppard tour. Crue were fucking awful.
Were they?
Like, the fact that they have a hardworking crew that puts on that visual live show with the fucking roller coaster and the fire and the pyro, like, that's the show. But like, I heard that tour while I was packing down Panthers gear from the backstage, and they're not a good band. Like, they're legendary. They're fucking legendary. But yeah, like as a a kid who grew up looking at it and going, wow, this is amazing. And then seeing it, from backstage, like, whatever. I'll say that.
Canceled their dates. They postponed their dates that are coming up because Vince Neil it was sad.
Well, the one show that comes to mind from Velvet, and I know we all love Too Short. He is a great performer, and it's funny that it's Nick's favorite, but the story I'm about to tell from a club owner point of view was just shit. So what he had done was he had double booked himself. He booked himself at Velvet Jones the same night he booked himself down in Orange County. And so his thought, without telling us, because we usually do doors at 8, you have a litany of openers that go on from like 9 to like 10, and then our headliner goes around 10:30. We'd sold out the show. He showed up at like 8 and wanted to go on at 8:30 when there was about 15 people in there, and he'd already been, I think we'd already paid the full thing up front or whatever else. I'm like, dude, you can't do that. Like, we've sold these tickets. No one's coming. We're gonna have to refund all these goddamn tickets. So you can't fucking do this. He's like, oh, well, I got another show, down in Orange County. So he proceeded to, the 12 people that were there were stoked. Everybody else was fucking furious. And as it turns out, he got stuck in traffic and didn't make his late show anyway.
Oh.
I'm like, you know what, dude? Fucking serves you right. That's what you fucking get for double booking, because you thought, you just make that money twice. Now, on the flip side of that, on the way that should have been handled, well, I guess this is a different story altogether. We had Chance the Rapper come through, and what the mistake we made was the promoter was some guy I hadn't worked with before, and usually we sold all our tickets in-house. So we put up our 300 tickets, sold out like nothing. The promoter had also sold 300 tickets on his own. So now we've got 600 people trying to get into a venue that holds nothing. And honestly, as far as I was sitting there going, this is going to be an absolute nightmare. Everyone's going to want to fight to get in. Everyone's going to want their money back. But this guy was so pro, and him and his tour manager were just looked at each other, and I was just like, well, hey, I mean, how long's your set? It was something like 50 minutes. I'm like, how about we do early show, late show? We'll pack in the first 300 people. You'll get paid twice what you would have been paid otherwise, and no one will go home.
Nice.
Whatever. So everybody lined up. I'm like, all right, first 300, shoved them in there. We had one opener, did the headlining set while everyone waited. These guys went out. Everybody else came back in, double dipped, and the guy was stoked. But that's how you handle an audible like that. You don't try to get greedy like Too Short did and double dip on 2 separate venues 150 miles away from each other.
So at your venue, could I come in and drink while I waited for the band to play, or no? You're either inside or outside.
No. Well, that's the thing, is our capacity included the front patio, the upstairs, the main hall, and so once you hit your mark of, I think at the end there, the last few years we had our capacity up to 350, but you just shove them in there, then boot them out and shove them in again. We did the same thing with E40, except that was planned for 2 shows because we knew we could. That guy would sell out. That guy was great too. But yeah, for the most part, a lot of the hip hop acts were great to work with. But on occasion, you get the guys. And even Too Short set, to be honest, was mainly, like, looking back on it, he would bring all his Bay Area crew up, and they would, they would perform more than half the set. You get about 20 minutes of Too Short and an hour of his crew singing songs that you didn't fucking know anything about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to sit here and just badmouth the dude. I respect him as a performer, but I felt like he kind of took us for granted and just didn't really look at us as being like a show that he should give a shit about,
Yeah. Did any of the guys from Toad ever play there?
Glenn Phillips played acoustic. The Toad Wet Sprocket didn't play as a full band, I don't think. Dishwalla did. I don't think Ugly Kid Joe did either. Snot did, of course, after Lynn passed away. They got their new singer and they came back. And actually, we had Mikey's guitar was hanging on the wall, and we had a mural of Lynn painted on the wall for the longest time. But some great bands come through there.
I used to write with Dean from Toad.
Oh, did you? Nice.
Yeah, I've written a bunch of stuff with him. So, well, I really appreciate it, guys. Unless you have any other stories, you're welcome to tell them. But otherwise, thank you.
Yeah, I think this has been great, man.
Thanks for having us on.
Like 24 years. That's insane.
Yeah, man, time flies. It's kind of nuts.
Because the thing was about this, it was just because, like, I remember because Dave, my old roommate, was the one who told me about your book. And then I'm like sitting there reading like the bio of it. I'm like, dude, me and this dude, I mean, obviously you went off with much bigger bands than I did, but for 2 dudes that lived across the street from each other in a random college town, we kind of took very similar paths as far as to get to, which rounded us back to where we are now, which is just, I don't know, it's just small world, I guess.
I think it's kind of neat too. Yeah, Dave did the same sort of thing with me. He's like, you got to talk to Craig.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, but call me. I'm easy to
Okay,
talk
sure.
to.
Yeah. Got my
Yeah.
number. Pretty accessible. It's been I don't know, is there a time limit on this, Joel? I just had a quick question.
No.
Okay. No one cares. And this is for
Well, the
both.
worst so far or not worst. The longest we gone is like 3 hours. And then I was like, I gotta pee. I gotta pee.
Okay, so we got a little bit of time. I'm just curious if you guys had any like backstage moments that like had nothing to do with the show or any kind of realizations of like you see somebody and you're like, oh, what the, and it just kind of just wrapped it around like, oh God, I can't believe I'm here with this dude and whatever else. I mean, what experiences you guys have with that?
Those DeLeo brothers, they're my guitar heroes. Those are my two absolute favorite, guitar guys, the guys from STP. And I got to do a couple these all-star nights Matt Sorum puts on in Hollywood. It's Rock to Recovery. And like, both times Dean and Robert, just like you meet your heroes and then you find out they're super nice and friendly. And yeah, they're just amazing. So I'm stoked to hear that you got to work with them. And I got to tour with Richie Mazzetta for a couple of years, and he was their original guitar tech.
I know Richie. Yeah, Richie
so,
did the tour with me. Richie was working at line 6.
Line 6, yeah.
Richie toured with them like way back.
He was the original guy. He was in the studio for everything, fixing up guitars, and I think through maybe to the 5th album. But yeah, like what a great guy, what a great cat, so many great stories. And then just such respect for those two guys as players and as people. I never met Eric, and obviously I didn't meet Scott, but yeah, the Rob and Dean are fucking ace. Absolutely great guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good people for real. They all treated me great.
Nick, did you ever have any of those kind of backstage moments that made the world feel real small?
I will share we toured with Judas Priest, and Richie happened to be on that tour with us, but we were in Dallas, and the party was happening at Vinnie Paul's strip club afterwards. So it was the Steel Panther guys and the Judas Priest guys all piled into a party bus. And I wasn't there for what happened later, but I guess what happened later is that the party bus driver had an iPad, and various members of both crew and band were just racking up lines on his iPad and just getting super fucked up. And the guitarist for Priest, I believe, was bogarting the baggie, as it were, and our drum tech had bought it. And so he was kind of like, hey man, like you're kind of bogarting my blow. The next morning was the show in Dallas, and our drum tech could not get out of bed. He was so fucked up. So and mind you, we had like a 3:30 load in. It was fucking late in the day, and he still couldn't get out of bed. So I ended up, tucking him in. I'll take care of setting him a drum kit. No worries. Like you said, like wearing a number of hats, like knowing how to set up a drum kit. Mm-hmm. He slept in, and then the next night, the guitarist from Priest comes back, not with like $100 for the drum tech to pay for the blow that he bogarted. He brings another fucking bag of blow, and our drum tech is just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you do that? It's like, oh man, I'm sorry. I was just trying to pay you back,
Money works,
Yeah.
Yeah, money works.
Jesus. That what made me think about asking you guys that question was when Joel, when you were asking me about just kind of tour stories, the one that popped up that made me kind of think just how small the world was we were doing some festival in Germany, I think. And I think I was with Lagwagon at the time, and the dressing room, like there was probably like 50 bands and everyone's got their own little zone. And, there's only so much of the catering you can eat and whatever else, just waiting to go on. And there happened to be a TV on, and the guys from Mastadon were hanging out over here, in their full garb, which is, I guess, just how they dress normally. And Game of Thrones was on TV. Now, I don't watch Game of Thrones. I was never a fan. I didn't drink the Kool-Aid or whatever else. But I'm like, okay, it's something to watch. And I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm looking at it. I'm looking over at Mastadon. I'm looking at the screen. I'm looking at Mastodon, and they catch me doing this, and they look at me, and they look at the screen, and they just kind of shrug their shoulders like they were typecast into one of the big fight scenes because they looked like those Vikings, dude. I'm like, that's just piecing this whole thing together. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? I'm like, yeah, well, when you look like this, these are the kind of gigs you get. I'm like, well, right on. And then that same day, going back to the small town I grew up on, I found a channel, that a U.S. Network that was broadcasting, and they were showing the show Cops. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm familiar with cops. This ought to be fun. I'm sitting there watching it. I'm looking at it. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I know that gas station. Like, I know that Tractor Supply, and it was taking place in Red Bluff.
It's great.
While I'm sitting in Germany, like the triangulation of the shit that I was seeing on TV, where I was at and what was happening. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? But it's just one of those, like, you know, just how small the world becomes, I guess. Especially, I mean, I don't know if you found this to be true, but it seems like with the touring crew guys, it's like the same, I don't know, a couple hundred people that work for every band. And when one band's off, they get passed to another band's off. So they're just constantly going around. And that's why all those festivals, it was just like it was like a high school reunion most times. Like, oh, who am I gonna cross paths with today? I miss it. I'm so glad it's coming back. It's just these last 15 months have just been brutal. I mean, for Nick, I mean, for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, everything's getting going. You're already working. So I think,
Well, I mean, the stuff I've got going, yeah, Nick's hard at it. My stuff doesn't come in until a little bit later. It's much smaller. They're kind of easing into it with like the Caddies and stuff. And then I think Frank's doing punk rock bowling. I think the Mad Caddies are too. So yeah, it's just gonna be good. Just be great to see everybody. It's like this being locked inside for 15 months is just, it's not good for anyone.
no. Okay.
Cool,
Very nice to meet you, Nick. And
You too.
Craig,
Been a pleasure.
I'll be in touch.
Great to
Yeah.
see you, my friend. Joel, always a pleasure. And
Yeah. I'll talk to you guys soon.
good times.
Thanks, guys.
Later, guys.
Yeah.
Later.
Hey, thanks for watching Party Like a Rock Star. If you're not already subscribed to the Facebook or YouTube channels, do it. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The handle is Party of Stars. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.